So all of you know Ken Bass, Faculty Senate Representative here, President, and he's going to address plagiarism.
Talk a little bit about a topic that none of us have a problem with. When's the last time a student cheated in your class by plagiarizing someone else's work? Anybody have a class going on right now? Maybe yesterday then? Plagiarism comes from a Latin word, plagiarius, which means to kidnap. And you could probably see immediately the reference, because what happens, as you well know, is you steal someone else's ideas or words. So I'm not going to waste a lot of time talking about that, but look at our CTC policy about scholastic honesty and look at the definition of plagiarism. What do you think about that? Is there any part of that that is problematic when it comes to our assessing what plagiarism is? So where are the microphones? Shall I just throw them out? Right here. Right here on the front row. It'll take a second, it'll catch.
We teach in our composition courses that plagiarism can occur even when giving credit to a source. So the definition that you just showed, we might want to qualify that a little bit more and explain that if you are taking the exact words verbatim from a source and you're not putting that inside quotation marks, for example, you may credit the source, but you're not crediting the exact words, and so this definition could definitely probably be updated.
Yes. Okay, so what the question was, can you plagiarize yourself? Yes, you can. We have another comment over here or question.
In the very way that sometimes we word a question or ask them to read and regurgitate, we don't require them to cite even the textbook. And a lot of times we want that citation directly from the textbook, and we don't explain to them that I want you to tell me where you got it from. According to this textbook, here's the answer, page number, whatever. And many times, as instructors, we build a course read and regurgitate versus read and apply. And that regurgitation of the textbook is plagiarism in itself.
Okay, so that raises the question that was asked by several in response to the email that went out a couple of weeks ago, or last week. Can you plagiarize by not properly citing the textbook? Yes, it's a source. Anything that you use that is a source. So the question that is in front of us, I think one of the most fundamental problems we have is across the campus, can we develop a guideline for plagiarism that we apply consistently if you have a writing assignment or another assignment where plagiarism might be an issue, or we could apply this across the campus so that if a student takes a course in nursing or if they take a course in anthropology or whatever, it's applied equally and it's applied consistently so that they don't say, well, Professor X didn't care if I didn't cite the textbook, or Professor Y didn't require that I do that. A policy across the campus, yes. You're getting your exercise today.
I think there are issues with students in classes that haven't already had the high school education that we expect that they have to know how to do this. And so for us in office technology, they may be in more workforce classes. And so in my class, I say that they have to put it in their own words. I actually cite the textbook in the assignment and just, I mean, literally they just have to copy and paste it so that they know how to do it, because many students don't know how to do it. And I know we all have our funny student things that students say, but one of my favorite was I had a student who had no clue how to write a short report. It was just kind of giving a summary of some chapter ideas. And so I said, you know, it has to be complete sentences, subject predicate, you need to have complete thoughts, watch your grammar, and don't forget your citations. And so she wrote me back, and she said, I don't know what a predicate is, and I don't have any citations, I'm a good driver. So I think we also have to understand where our students are coming from.
I think that's an excellent point. So some of you who may be a little closer to the high schools, are they prepared, coming from high school? We have a totally separate group of students who don't come from high school, but related to high school, do you think they come in prepared, knowing what citations? Okay, I see a lot of heads going this way. So what can we do to better prepare them when they come in, so that, because they're going to be required to write across the campus, right? That's something that's very important. And I don't know if it's fair to dump it all on 1301 and 1302. Can we develop something that we can assist them in learning what this basic policy that we have? This is the very minimum. If someone wants to get a little more elaborate with their citation requirements, maybe so.
Perhaps an orientation. I know a couple years ago we talked about creating this grand orientation for students. I don't know if the fundamentals class is a part of that, with the study skills, so on and so forth, but any new student should be exposed to that sort of thing in an orientation, sort of fundamentals class. Nobody gets by without it.
Do we know if we have that class or something like that available? Does anyone know if we have that, not just available, but required? Yes, ma'am. So you're saying the library has some links?
The library has links and videos on
Here's one of the problems with having information available that's not required. They won't go do it. And I don't blame them. I don't go look at everything that's available for me to look at either. It's just too much to do. So we need something that's structured, because how many of you would say, let's just see, look around when I ask this, how many of you would say that you've had an issue with plagiarism? Yeah, look around. It's not just one or two. There are departments where that's not an issue as much, but we need something that we can require that's across the board that we can apply consistently. Did I see another hand? And then, okay, so.
That course at the beginning is wonderful. We've talked about it a lot. I've done a lot. The problem I see with CTC doing that is that we have classes, we have students transferring, and we don't really want to make those students who are coming in for just one or two things also take an extra class. I think having this as something that we would all, anybody who does writing, but anyway, that we would include that at the beginning of our courses. And I wish we could have that starter class, but I haven't seen it.
I've always been an advocate for having a required course that taught students, you know, study skills. You could include the plagiarism and just getting them prepared to be a good student. But I do know that we can only have 60 hours on our degree plans, and so that, you know, if you're going to put an hour on it, it messes that up. And then financial aid, and there's just a lot of other behind-the-scene issues. But I wish we could somehow make it work where students come in and they have to take a course where They learn study skills, and they learn what plagiarism is, and they learn, you know, how to be on time, and that you don't expect exceptions and all those things, which we try to include on the, you know, FAST program. But I don't know how we can make it work.
But I bet we can make it work.
I would love it.
Dan, don't talk.
So we've always thought that, actually, but when we first made the Learning Frameworks class, we wanted to be able to, I don't know, Renee's here, we wanted to be able to cover those kind of fundamental things in the frameworks class. The problem is no one has room on their degree plan to take a frameworks class unless it's part of the core. To get that onto the core, that has to become a theoretical course and not so much hands-on. And it seems like, Tracy, I'm not sure where you are in here.
Over here.
It seems like no matter what we've said, it's still not on the core. Am I correct? Right.
And so,
Right, and I know that you kept moving it more and more and trying to get it approved for the core, but I think what's happened is what started out as a course that we envisioned in the way that Deb just talked about, moved into a different direction on the ACGM, so we ended up with nothing. So even though we could make another course like that, the big problem is where does it fit on a degree plan when everybody can barely get through all their things? I'm thinking maybe we could add something onto plagiarism onto like the last 20 minutes or 30 minutes of student orientation. Maybe that would be a place we could put it, but the other problem is student orientation is not required. It's not mandatory, it is optional. But the reason that's optional is because the military, can you explain some more?
Well, the military, based on the military, we just cannot make it a requirement as far as the orientation. That's.
So could we make the argument, and then Daniel, I'll come to you. Could we make do you guys think we could make the argument that plagiarism affects completion rates? Does it affect student grades? Yes. Do some students fail because they plagiarize? Then it affects completion rates. And that means it should be pretty important, because we have now moved into a world where we're concerned about completion rates and success points, and now plagiarism is standing in the way of that to some degree. Yes?
If I could just make a quick, just input as a student, I would honestly love a writing, to learn how to write, because I suck at writing, but I would like to know how to actually write a paper, how to cite it correctly, use correct grammar, everything. So if we could make this as a course, I would take it, just as a input.
What courses have you already taken?
I'm in my last semester, I only have 4 classes left.
There's a problem. So did you take Comp 1 and Comp 2?
I took Comp 1, I didn't have to take Comp 2.
Have you taken any other courses that you had to write a paper?
Yes, I took his class, and I took Crosby's class, and there was another one, but I cannot remember.
I mean, you guys jumped over me, so I'm just going to speak because I have the mic. I mean, not to rebuild the wheel, but we had a study skills course. We've had a study skills course for years. They just asked me to put it online, and I did. So it might not necessarily say, can we build a course to go on a core, but we have a course built. Just pay one of my instructors to teach it and make people take it. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be tuition. I mean, if this is what we need, maybe we just need to do it.
Well, one question I had, people were talking about credit hours and trying to fit it into the core. When I was up at Baylor, we had required courses that had 0 credit hours assigned to them. We had to take them, but we got no credit for it.
Were they free?
No.
No.
No, they weren't free. We had to pay the fees and stuff and everything, but no, it was not a free class. You had to take it though. And you had to take it a certain number of times. What if we just make it a 0 credit hour course that you have to take, your first year, if you're a full-time student or something like that, or, we might be able to make it free, I don't know, but up there at least it wasn't free. So that would get around the credit hour issue with trying to keep in the 60 hours, because then it's just a 0 credit hour course. It doesn't add any hours on. It's just one more requirement.
One concern with that is if you require the student to pay for the course, a lot of our students are on financial aid. If it's not on their degree plan, it will not be paid for and they could not afford it. So if we make it a requirement for them to actually start their other classes, that might be an issue.
Well, the other question I would have with that, though, is if I'm not mistaken, credit hours is what determines how much you pay for the class. So the cost to the student for the class is based on the number of credit hours. If it's 0, we ought to be able to do it where it's like a flat fee of like, $10 or whatever. Do something like that maybe, just to get it in, get them the information, and
that would
not
raise
put the
the
extra
question of
financial
whether
burden,
or
maybe.
not that investment for having the instructor, as Jenny mentioned, to teach the course is worth it to CTC for it to increase completion rates. Is that small investment to have someone teach basically a free course that's required worth it at the end when our completion rates go up? Because I'm assuming it wouldn't be a very large investment, and it might yield incredible benefits at the end. Okay, Max?
We might want to consider whenever we identify students in trouble, at that particular point, we take Jeannie's course, maybe have to tweak it a little bit, but put it online, and then the student would be highly encouraged to complete that online viewing of study skills, which can include a variety of topics, But it would have to be a fairly short video, but we don't look at it as a credit course. We just look at it as we're going to send them on probation or something. Community service.
Right. Right. Yes. We have, yeah, but we're recording this. Speak to the camera then.
Doesn't have the skills, they can go in. Or there are case by case. I mean, one line. There's a variation. There's a lot of gray area for plagiarism. Do I do karaoke now? There's a lot of gray area for plagiarism, and there is case by case. The degree of consequences are there. Perhaps it could be some kind of probation kind of thing. If somebody is caught, then they need to go and take this in order to be reaccepted into some class like that. Those are some ideas that I think might work. I think if you blanket it across all the students, you're gonna disenfranchise some of the ones that won't ever do this.
Do we know if there's a place any point in their being accepted to CTC or before they begin, that we ask if they understand the rules of citation? Do we ask that at any point? Is that part of any assessment or just after classes start? Yeah. WR?
Yeah, as we know in the Declaration of Independence, it does not say that all examples of plagiarism are created equally. So we need to make sure that we need to look at the penalty phase of it too. I mean, personally, I don't think there's, short of someone handing you someone else's work and trying to pass that off on their own in full, it doesn't seem to me that there's a reason to fail someone out of a class. I mean, there are plenty of examples of plagiarism where students simply don't understand what they're doing. And throwing the book at them and trying to fail them in a class doesn't seem like, it moves it from being a moment where we instruct them to, the death penalty or whatever. So maybe what we need to do is, look at the penalty phase of it too and sort of, figure out the different grades of plagiarism that there are. You can subtract points. I guess when you were talking about, it affecting our rates of completion, again, short of someone just handing you someone else's work and trying to pass it off as their own, I'm not sure there's really any reason to fail a person. But I think the penalty phase of it's important, I think.
Right. I'm not sure that they would necessarily fail just for plagiarism, but their plagiarism might decrease their grade that's already compromised maybe in other areas to the point at which they then fail. Dan, do you have a... It is you.
Yeah, it was Randa Palco. I was wondering if maybe this could be set up as training rather than a course, so you don't have to worry about fees and the credit. And a while back, I went into the on-demand videos at the library. They've got some really good videos on what plagiarism is and some of the consequences that it could even cause you to not get a job in the future if it's on your record or whatever. Could we make that so that we do a playlist from the library and make it mandatory that they watch these and sign something at the end or something saying that they watched them and that they understand?
It still does, ma'am.
My thoughts on a quick fix, which would, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I just marked it. We have two and a third over here.
I mean,
just
you want me to go ahead?
No, yeah, go ahead. I'm just letting them know when they're up.
I think Mike's point about making it ubiquitous and having some negative side effects with students that don't need that already know that was a good one. But I was thinking maybe a quick fix is maybe as part of registration during their wait time, they could watch something. They could watch something on plagiarism. I mean, it won't fix everything. It's not an ultimate solution, but there would be some exposure there at least. Right. That's just for students here. Yeah.
Right. Yes, sir. And then we'll go to Marlene, and then...
How about I put something out there?
Okay, come on with it. Come on with it.
I've been fighting with this microphone here.
All right. We don't want to fight.
We're beating a dead horse. You're talking about plagiarism, but there's no punitive action. I'm from New York City, in case you can't recognize the accent. I can steal your radio and leave the music behind. People are going to find a way to get around the system, like Dean Anderson elaborated on. No matter how many mechanisms you have in place to your car, there's going to be a way to steal it. But if there's no punishment, then if there's no way of identifying, my biggest problem with plagiarists is to keep them away from the students that want to be honest. You want to talk about classes that need to be out there? How about, I don't know, morals, work ethics? Unless the student wants to do it, and there's always going to be one that's going to get around the system. We're cookie cuttering all these plagiarists, all these cheaters. You can't fix them all. But if there's a punishment in there and we can remove them from taking the honest student to take the easy way, that might fix the problem. I didn't understand that it was plagiarism. Really?
All right.
I'm
well, done. Okay, excellent. I'm from Texas. And if you leave the music playing, I'm going to follow the sound waves and lasso your... I got you. Marlene, and then we're going to get there.
I was just saying, is it on?
It
Can you
is.
hear me? I was just saying you have to teach them first and then hold them. Testing. There you go. Okay. Teach them first and then hold them accountable. We were talking before about the library. The library does offer some face-to-face, also online. So what I've done for some of my classes is I've made it extra credit for them to go to the library. So a 30 minutes orientation, and they also do it online, live. And then so you can either make it extra credit or make it worth some points. And then if they're still doing it, because a lot of them don't know, then you hold them accountable.
Okay, yes, sir.
Hey, I think we're missing this right here. The problem is like she said, the students don't know how to properly cite and write a paper and do the correct thing because they're not taught. For example, in the Homeland Security program, I got a lot of operators, infantry guys, people have been doing this, they're 30 years old or older. They're not taking English 1301 the first course. They're going to write something that's familiar to them. They're going to my classes and starting off. And it's like kindergartners writing these papers, and it's not their fault because they might have wrote something in high school 20 years prior. Now, many schools I've been to, and I've been to a lot of colleges, make you, no matter how many degrees you got, take like a 4-week course, and they make you write a 2 or 3 page research paper, and they tell you how to do APA formatting or MLA, Chicago Turbine, whatever the case it is. And that's what we need to do. We need to offer for free. We already got the programs created. We need to identify in the college, hey, look, teach them how to do a basic paper, how to properly cite. This is what plagiarism is, because if you don't do this, now it's considered plagiarism. Make them do it. Plenty of instructors here would do it part-time, make a little extra cash. It's nothing in the big picture for the school, and it meets what you're looking for, and it stops a lot of plagiarism. Now, in your class, if you catch somebody cheating, that's a total different, that's cheating. Most students plagiarize because they don't know, all right? And most of you find your problems when they're doing papers and they're getting resources or Wikipedia and everybody else, and that's what that course would teach them. Exactly what she's saying, they're not taught. And that's what we need to do, like a 4-week course. It's free, so we ain't got to worry about funding, and be done with it, and that way we don't have to beat this to death for another hour.
One other option that might work, what if we have more than one teacher for it? What if we split the load? So one person doesn't have to do all of it, but one person takes 2 weeks. The next person takes 2 weeks.
Okay, Jane, and then we'll come over here.
Okay, the purpose of the dinosaurs in the room are to give y'all a sense of perspective. Let me just tell you a little about the past. When CTC first started accepting international students, Jan, I want you to start nodding here, we had a huge, tremendous problem because the cultures from which these students came had vastly different definitions of plagiarism than what we did. In certain cultures, certain Far Eastern cultures, it was considered the way to learn, to copy your masters, the way to learn good diction, the way to learn good papers by hand copying what was considered a good paper, and on and on. And so we had to educate whole populations of students as to this is the Western idea, and this is the idea at the school of what you will need to do. The only way that could be successfully done after they had gotten a certain score on their TOEFL and completed a certain level of English and went into your classes was on an individual basis. And that's, you'll forgive me, that's the way I look at things because, and this is the reason I don't speak up in things like this, Spanish is a different animal from history, from psychology. It's the methodologies are different, the outcomes are different, etc. It seems to be helpful in my classes, there's enough caveats for you. I'm not the expert in your field, but it's helpful in my classes to explain to my students each class, each semester, this is what I'm going to consider cheating, this is what I consider plagiarism. And even before certain activities like a major test, this is what's going to be cheating, guys. This is to talk about this is acceptable, to talk about this is unacceptable, this and that. And to me, it would seem logical that each instructor would want to have their own little mini education, and it doesn't seem like it would take long at all, rather than this thing you couldn't guarantee somebody had read. They might read and not remember it, or if they're a cheater, they might have their friend to do it for them, in terms of making it a blanket overall type of thing. In Spanish, I have the wonderful luxury of saying, because most of the time my students plagiarize in the form of getting somebody else to write something for them simply because they want to make sure it's right. And they want to make sure it's right before they see me. And I have to tell them, sweetheart, you don't know past tense yet. You couldn't have written this. I know that. And you have to back people up, and you have to give them a chance. However, I have been, what you're talking about as far as consequences, I've evidently been lying to my students, and I've been doing it innocently because of because I'm so ancient in this system. I tell them that if they are caught cheating on something, no matter what it is, and it's deliberate, that the wrath of God is going to come down on them. I tell them a story, a true story, of a student I had caught cheating on a test, and I marched him to the dean's office, and he lost his place in the Corps, in the cadet at A&M, which had been his lifelong dream. And it wasn't just my class, it was another instructor who had come at the same time. And I tell him that story, and I say, you have no idea, the horrible things. And I go through the big Cinderella. Of course, now none of you would cheat, I understand. But what's going to get us in trouble is when somebody says, I saw so-and-so copy so-and-so, or I saw so-and-so. And then we've got a third party involved, and this is messy. Do everything in your power to avoid that. And I make it sound as if, seriously, their career could be over, their money would not be reimbursed, they would not be asked back to CTC. Maybe I'm blowing smoke, but my students' eyes get really, really large, and they usually never, ever try anything like that.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
I think there's an intentional cheater and an accidental cheater. I don't want to address the intentional cheater because that's already been done. The accidental cheater, okay, I caught you. You now have a 0 on this item until you log into, let's say, Blackboard, do a biosig, take the course or a quick lesson on how to do proper annotation, paperwork, etc., pass a test, and then come back to me, and I will reconsider a resubmission of your homework. That way we have identified a person who didn't know, we teach them how it is, how we are expecting it, we are requiring them to verify that they themselves have done that, and if they want to do the work, then we'll consider taking their second assignment.
Okay, so I think it's becoming clear then that there's a component of education that is required here. The assumption, I think, is that they come in knowing how to cite properly. They come in knowing how to do that because, hey, you're in college now. You've probably never heard that line before, but you're in college, you're expected to do, and maybe we're expecting too much, that maybe we need to back up a little bit and reconsider.
Okay, so just one comment because I have to leave. I don't want to talk about plagiarism itself. I think we all agree that it's not good. We probably agree to some extent that students certainly need to be aware of it. I want to approach this from a little bit different angle because I think some good ideas have come up on what to do about it, how to address it. The one thing I have not heard is how to address it outside of this campus. So please keep in mind that we have more students outside of the Killeen campus than we have here. So if you say we're going to have a 4-week course here, how do you do that in Gatesville? How do you do that in the service area? How do you do that at Fort Lee? And how do you do that in Europe and places like that? So all I'm telling you is, as you come up with ideas, that's the one thing that we would have to figure out. How can we make it happen for other places too?
Okay. I think the general consensus is we can do this. We can figure out a way to make this happen and be good at it. It won't necessarily be perfect the first time. Very few things are. But as we roll this thing out, whatever this thing turns out to be, we can learn from how it's working. The end goal is to see our completion rates go up, right? And the end goal is to get more students through finishing degrees. And if plagiarism is standing in the way, I don't want us to feel like we should shrug our shoulders and say, well, you know, cheating's been around forever. Yes, it has, but it doesn't really look good on us if we kind of shrug our shoulders and let it go. We should at least say something. We should do something. We should try to educate and then maybe respond when it is done. Yes?
Right. One of the issues that I see is it's not necessarily that the students never learned how to do proper citation or write a proper paper in the first place. It's that they don't necessarily retain it. I mean, how many people actually write a paper every day or every week, something to keep that in mind. So when, let's say, they go through 20 years, a year, 6 months, whatever, when they go to write the next paper, they're not necessarily going to remember every little facet of doing it. So maybe when we present these projects, have links to tutorials on how to do proper MLA formatting or whatever formatting we want to do, have little plagiarism quizzes, something like that set up. Just things that are set up as more of a reminder, or we can have like these open enrollment online classes to where they can go through and take these courses. It doesn't necessarily have to be done through like having a teacher hired to do it. We can just have something automated, multiple choice questions and that type of stuff after they read the material. So we can have them run through. It can generate a certificate or something like that after the course is completed, and that could be the end of it right there. I mean, you kind of reinforce what they have already learned in the past, just kind of remind them of what they've already been taught, and then if they need a little bit more, we can have these automated deals, and then you don't have to worry about any kind of credit.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
So why don't we beef up our plagiarism statement, because it's clearly not appropriate. You need to include things like paraphrasing and things like that. So to be more clear as to what we consider, maybe taking from the communication department and making that our college-wide. And then why don't we just add links to the proper citations to the library that they already have set up into Blackboard, into our shells, syllabus page 1, and then that way we can all direct to the same information that's already available. It's just an idea.
Okay, so Jenny?
I was just going to say,
Go ahead and say it.
I was just going to say, when we do beef up this language, I do want you guys to understand that I house the ESL department, and if any of my ESL students were to read that statement, they would tell you they have no idea what it says.
The first one or this one?
To me, they're both pretty much the same. So just when we're trying to beef up this statement, understand that in my department, they would not understand any of those statements.
So, just in case I haven't talked about this yet, but just I've had it up here for a second. The communication department has worked on something within their own department, and I have it listed here. I can link it or email it, or we can put it on the Faculty Senate page and let you look at it and see if you think it would be something good to adopt. It further explains what each of the little phrases within that sentence mean, and I think it does a very good job of doing that. Did I see another? Yes, ma'am.
Quick question, this may be for Sharon. Is it possible to enroll every student, whether instructors are using Blackboard or not, just a thought, to have a course that remains in that student's profile until completion, or until stop out, and that course would be sort of like the orientation everybody's been talking about with study skills and links to library services that would serve as a reference for students no matter what class they're in. So they'd be in this, every student would be in this one course, call it what you will, but that course serves as a resource.
Blackboard is based on auto runs of files. That would have to be a course that would be put in colleague that would have like no start or end date. I'm thinking maybe course sites might work for that, because that way students could be put into it, they could self-enroll or whatever, and the information would be there. Course sites is just like Blackboard, only it's free. And I think that would be an option, because I think it would be too complicated to try to get it in colleague so that it could come into Blackboard. Do you see what I'm saying? Right.
We could use Canvas for our department, but so
maybe something could be put on the websites, either our website or the CTC website that they could go into.
Just to add to what Melissa's saying, this is really loud, but just to add to what she's saying, just like when we have to do our training, like our safety training or whatever it is, they put a Blackboard course on us that's not through colleague. And then we also have, there's an, I can go in and look and see what it's called, but I'm in a course, it's like a faculty forum or something. That's not through colleague either. So why couldn't we add something like that to students that just stays? And then we can direct them to that when they have a question, or before we have a project that's due that's requiring them to, when we know plagiarism could be an issue, we can direct them to that, so everything is in one place for them.
They have to be enrolled in Blackboard in order to be in anything like that. And if they're, I'm not sure technically how that would work. I would have to talk to my people, okay? Let me talk to Joe and the others and see if we could do something like that. But I think there may be problems, because if we manually put students in, once our files are run, which run at least twice a day, if they're not in the file runs, then they get taken out. Now the organizations that you're talking about, the faculty forum and stuff, you're manually put in there first, and it's different from being in a course. It's an organization, okay?
We can't have that for students, so we couldn't have an organization for students?
I'm not sure. I'll have to find out. Okay.
So in case you're wondering, this meeting is going exactly the way we want it to, because the purpose is to get ideas, and then we can figure out what we're going to do with the ideas at some future date. Part of the reason why we don't have good solutions is that we don't ask enough people. And when we don't ask, we can't listen. And if we do listen to these ideas, even if it's not your idea, it may spark something that in you that you said, well, if we did that a little differently, and I think we could come up with a really good solution to this problem that will work for all of us and will be very consistent, and we can also reap the benefits of it. Sharon, did you have?
Well, I was saying the same thing that I don't know.
Eva?
Yes, I was saying the same thing.
Okay, okay. Okay, so it seems like we have identified a couple of areas. Yes, ma'am.
Just as like an add-in again, could we get like student input on this, like
yes,
for what they actually feel like they need and what would help them?
There's a novel idea.
It's for the students.
Right.
Like they would know what they're weak on and what they need help on.
Right. That's part two of this. So we wanted to get input from the faculty, and then we're going to reach out to students to find out exactly what you've suggested, because they are kind of the proprietors of this problem. So we've kind of identified that there needs to be some level, or at least an offering of training. We need to stop assuming that they know what plagiarism is and how to properly cite. then don't cut their heads off as soon as they make one mistake. I think that's a great idea all across life. You shouldn't be known by your last mistake. Or you shouldn't be identified with the worst thing you've ever done. I know, we'll move on from that. So we've identified that, and then could there be levels? Some of you talked about, okay, is this a repeat offender? Is this someone who's done it one time, learned from it, and hasn't done it again, and was appreciative of the knowledge that was gained through the process? Any other comments or ideas about how to deal with any part of the plagiarism? Yes. You thought she was bringing you a microphone. Here's one that's coming.
So if it's too much work to give them their own course, what about the boilerplate stuff that we already get in our Blackboard courses? Couldn't we just add something to all courses like that? A section in the spine that includes that resources that's campus-wide?
Right. I think if you look on the left side of, at least in my Blackboard courses, down there is a scholastic dishonesty link. I clicked on it the other day, and there are several embedded videos. Now, for some reason, I couldn't get them to run. I asked some of the others, did you guys ever get them to run? Or did you try? No? Okay. So, I don't know if the links are still valid, but that information is in Blackboard now under scholastic dishonesty, that you can click on it and it does give you a little definition. The problem I think we're all acknowledging is that that definition doesn't really tell a student anything. You shouldn't steal someone else's words. Okay. I didn't show up with, I think WR said, a copy of the Constitution and say I wrote this. So what do we do? So there's several components to this. Did you have a?
Yeah, I thought of a way that we might be able to do what you were talking about, maybe a course in Blackboard. We could set it up so that the students who have Blackboard access can enroll themselves. You can do self-enrollment, but who will be responsible for creating the material and maintaining it?
We will. The faculty will find people who are qualified, intelligent, and capable and willing to do that, and we'll make it happen.
Okay, that's one way we could do it. Another way we could do something that I think might be good would be to use the course menu in the courses. Rather than putting a whole component in each course, which a lot of times instructors will hide or delete or whatever, if we put links in the course menu like we have for the Scholastic Honesty, which is supposed to link out to that playlist I was talking about, but maybe some of those on-demand videos aren't available anymore. I haven't checked it recently. We could have links in the course menu that would go to Scholastic Honesty. That's more positive than Scholastic Dishonesty, and also have a link to citation assistance or something. And in that way, it would just be in one location, trying to maintain something that could be in various locations. To me, that would make more sense.
Right. Okay. So we've had several good. Share. Okay, one more. We have a microphone coming your way.
Thank you. Sharon, you can correct me if I'm incorrect about this, but I teach some online courses, and as part of our course, there is a plagiarism quiz that students can take. In my course, it doesn't count for any points, but it's something that's available for them to take. Perhaps we can already use this instead of trying to reinvent the wheel. Also in the Blackboard courses, under it's like resources or something, there's information about APA writing. There's a link. There's information about MLA. You know, why couldn't we just maybe produce more information about this? And those teachers that teach in the classroom face-to-face be using, referring to these same resources. So it seems like we're trying to do a whole lot where there's already some stuff available. And as many of us as instructors, we talk about academic integrity in our classes. We talk about plagiarism and cheating, and we talk about citations. I give my students examples on the Blackboard when they have a project due, how to quote. when you're paraphrasing, or how to do a citation for a quotation, how to also cite when you're paraphrasing. I think there's already a lot of tools available, and maybe just making all of us more aware of what's there or incorporating it, in one place. But something that's already in Blackboard, that seems to me a place to start, since all instructors have access to Blackboard.
I think that sounds good. I think it's better not to have to reinvent the wheel. I think we do have a lot of resources that are not being used sufficiently. In fact, I think that our Blackboard template, in addition to containing a plagiarism quiz, also includes under papers projects in the course menu. I think it links to APA and all that.
It does,
and all that, yeah. And so maybe we just need to make the instructors and the students more aware of that, rather than creating something all new again.
Yes, ma'am.
I just had a thought. In an instance of plagiarism, maybe we ought to start doing an early alert if that's now an e-form, like send it to the student success team to get them in on it to help.
Okay.
I mean, let it be one of the check boxes of the student has plagiarized and I need help with this issue.
It is something that concerns us, so I think we need to be a big part of the solution. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to share, and maybe some of the nursing instructors can also chime in. We have what we call a success camp, and it used to be face-to-face, and that got to be too much. And so we put it all online, and thanks to Dietz, they were able to create a shell, and I forget what it's called. What's our success camp called? Okay. And so our students who are brand new, they have to link into this, and they have to complete certain tasks. One of them is to read or to say that they have looked over our handbook, this course syllabi, they know our policy, and we make them print out a certificate that they have completed that, and they also are given every semester that they're with us, they're given a reaffirmation form, and we have their signature that says that they will comply with all policies within our handbook, to include CTC's handbook as well. So I think I've heard from several people that it is the department and the faculty's responsibility to really orient them to our rules, our policy. And that is just one method that we use that works very well. In that, we have also our civility policy, our professionalism policy, and it seems to be working for us.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Crosby.
Just as a side note in all of this, the foundation of a good writer is an avid reader. We cannot simultaneously continue to expect better writing if we continue to eliminate the high reading standards. I've sat in publisher after publisher saying we're going to reduce reading, summarize more, summarize more, summarize more. They can't read 3 pages, they can't read 5 pages. We need to put just one little thing that they can understand and then a question for that. And then we simultaneously want high writing expectations. One of the things I do in my course is I branch out of the textbook and give them academic articles to read. 5, 6, 7 pages, stuff that is sourced, that is cited. One of the problems is they don't know how to do it because they've never seen it. They've never read it. They've never interacted with anything that is academic in nature. And a lot of our textbooks, I know this is controversial, but a lot of our textbooks are simply not academic. It's a lot of general information that doesn't require citation. And so the student's understanding of writing is you regurgitate the facts as presented in the textbook. It's not a collaboration of various ideas pulled from various sources. That's a higher level of intellect and a higher level academia. Many respects they've never encountered. And so one of the approaches of this is rethinking our courses and redesigning our courses around branching from the textbook into
higher reading standards in a world where publishers, textbooks, and even marketing standards have said, no, reduce, simplify, reduce, simplify, reduce, simplify, because that's where they're at. And our courses are designed, yes, to meet them where they're at, but to take them from where they're at and say, no, 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 you should be able to do more. You should be able to read a 15-page academic essay and collaborate this with this other 5-page or 6-page whatnot. And so the reading component is essential in building good writing, and we can't just look at the writing without also looking at what are we expecting our students to read in an average class, and are we holding them accountable to that reading?
Okay. Thank you very much. We have just about reached the end of our time together this morning. Thank you again for high quality input, and we will work out a solution.
That was good. That's what we need more of. We need more discussions about these kinds of things. I took notes. I wrote everything down. I wrote a lot of suggestions. And I mean, I agree that plagiarism is a big problem, and we do need to do something about it. So I'm happy when we get together like this and we can have this kind of interchange. So Ken, thank you. I appreciate it. It was needed. I'd still like to have that kind of interchange on the concept of rigor. I was hoping that we could find some time to do that here, but I don't think we're probably going to be able to do that. I've got about 7 minutes right now till break, and we can't do that in 7 minutes. So I would like to ask Ken, if it's okay with you, if at one of the faculty senate meetings, if I could come and we could have that discussion. Because I think it's the same kind of thing. I think rigor is one of those things that, like, what the heck is it? You know, it's pushing students to the point where they're challenged, but if you push them too much, they're frustrated, so that's not rigor. But if you don't push them enough, well, then that's not rigor. So what is rigor? Yes.
Years and years and years.
So it's a necessary discussion, I think, and I think it'll be a good one. And I hope that if we can advertise with Faculty Senate that we're having that discussion, that we have a really good turnout for that. So just whenever you can fit me in on a schedule, that would be great. Okay, I have a couple of announcements, and then we're ready to take a break. I don't know if you saw in NewsLink, Student Life will host a new student orientation on January 12th. So any department interested in hosting a table during that breakout session should contact Tondra Honey. They always like to see the departments turn out for that. Also, Student Engagement and Strategies Committee is asking departments to participate in the Spring Semester Welcome Back Bash and Resource Fair on Thursday, January 18th in the Anderson Campus Center. It's from 10:30 to 2:30. And anyone that wants to volunteer to help reach out to the students and welcome them back and answer questions about their department, you can contact Jeanette Campbell at 1450, extension 1450. So, okay, at that point, why don't we take a break? And what time is your session start? What time do they need to be back? Okay, so be back at 10:30.